The alien world was full of tall and proud beings. Their voices strong, their steps heavy, their bodies glowing under the pale twin moons. But among them was one who was not like the rest. She was small, fragile, and weak in their eyes. They called her the mini alien girl, a name filled with insult. Not love, she tried to walk with her people, but her legs were short and her steps were slow. The others mocked her, pushing her aside. They told her she was useless, a mistake of nature, and not worthy of the clan's name. She wanted to belong. But every day reminded her that she was different. Her nights were the worst. When the campfires burned bright and laughter echoed through the village, she sat alone in the shadows, hugging her knees. She listened to the voices of others sharing stories. While her own heart sank deeper into silence, sometimes she whispered to herself, just to feel less lonely. Her own mother had turned her face away. Her father had never spoken her name with pride. To them, she was a shame, a weakness the clan wanted to forget. And so one cold evening, when the winds howled and sand cut through the air like knives, they left her behind. No one called her back. No one cared if she lived or died. The little alien girl wandered into the wilderness. The forests were dark, the ground rough, and her bare feet bled as she walked. She searched for water, for food, for anything that could keep her alive. Hunger clawed at her stomach. But the pain of being unwanted was sharper. Each step felt like a question. Why was I even born? Days passed, her tiny body grew weaker. Her eyes lost their shine. She spoke less and less, for no one was there to hear. When she found berries, she ate. When she found a stream, she drank. But sometimes she thought maybe it was better to lie down and never wake again. At least then the voices that called her useless would fade. One night, as the twin moons hid behind dark clouds, she sat curled up beneath a tree. Her skin shivered under the cold air. She tried to sleep, but nightmares chased her in her dreams. She saw the faces of her people laughing, pointing, and turning their backs. She woke up with tears sliding down her cheeks, whispering into the night, "Why? Why am I alone?" But fate had not abandoned her completely. Though her people had thrown her away, there were eyes watching from a distance. Human eyes. A traveler from Earth, a man hardened by journeys across alien lands, had seen her once, small and trembling. Among the trees, at first he thought she was just another shadow. But when he looked closer, he saw the truth. She was a child. Abandoned, left to die. The man did not step closer yet. He simply watched as she tried to gather dry leaves with her tiny hands. Watched how she failed, her fingers trembling. Watched how she gave up and sat down, staring at the sky as if waiting for it to swallow her whole. Something inside the human stirred, a mix of anger and pity. The girl did not know he was there. She hugged her knees and rocked slowly, whispering words in her alien tongue. Her voice cracked, but even without understanding the language, the human could feel the meaning. It was the sound of despair. The cry of someone who had lost hope. Her kind had abandoned her for being small. They believed weakness had no place in their tribe, but the human thought differently to him. Strength was not just about size or power, it was about surviving against all odds. And as he looked at the little alien girl, he realized she had survived long enough to be found. That itself was strength still. The girl felt nothing but emptiness. She had no idea someone was nearby. She thought the world had forgotten her. She thought no arms would ever hold her. No voice would ever call her precious. She thought her life was nothing but a shadow fading into the cold night. Her head slowly sank onto her arms, her eyes half closed. Sleep dragged her down, but her body was weak. She looked like a small bird fallen from its nest, waiting for either mercy or death. The forest around her whispered with the sound of leaves, but there was no comfort in them. And yet, in that same forest, footsteps echoed softly. The human had decided. He would not watch any longer. something about her reminded him of the stories from his own world, stories of children abandoned in the wild. Stories where sometimes a single hand reaching out changed everything. He could not let her vanish into silence. The girl, too tired to notice, did not lift her head, but soon, for the first time in her life, she would discover something new. Someone was near. Someone who would not turn away. Someone who would see her not as a mistake, but as a soul worth saving. The lonely outcast was not as alone as she believed. The forest was silent except for the soft whisper of the wind. The little alien girl lay curled up at the base of the tree, her tiny chest rising and falling with weak breaths. Her skin glowed faintly in the moonlight, but it was the glow of someone fading, not thriving. She did not know that eyes were watching. Her, the human, tall and weather-worn, moved closer with careful steps. He was a traveler, a wanderer who had crossed deserts and mountains. But the sight before him stopped his heart. He had seen many strange things across the galaxy, but never something so fragile. So small, so abandoned. For a moment, he wondered if she was even real or a spirit of the forest. He crouched low, keeping his distance, not wanting to frighten her. His hand brushed against the soil. Rough and damp, he studied her face, the way her lips trembled, even in sleep. The way her hands clutched her knees, as though afraid the world might tear her apart. She looked no older than a child, yet carried the sorrow of someone who had lived through too much. A twig snapped beneath his boot, and the girl's eyes fluttered. Open, her pupils widened, glowing faintly. She gasped and scrambled backward. Pressing her small body against the tree trunk, her thin arms lifted as if to shield herself. Fear rushed through her, for she thought another of her kind had come to mock her. But what she saw was not one of her own. It was a human. His frame was broad, his eyes steady, and his face held no mockery, only concern. He raised his hands slowly, palms open, showing he meant no harm. His voice was low and calm. It's all right. I won't hurt you. She did not understand his words, but she understood his tone. Still, her heart hammered inside her chest. No one had ever spoken softly to her before. Every voice she remembered carried scorn or coldness. So why did this stranger's voice sound different? The human knelt down so he was no taller than her. His eyes met hers, and he stayed still, waiting. The girl blinked, her breath shaking. She could run, but where would she go? Back to the tribe that had abandoned her. Into the forest that held only hunger and death. For the first time, she stayed. Her throat felt dry, her voice weak. She whispered something in her alien tongue. The human tilted his head, not understanding. But the sorrow in her tone was clear. It was the sound of someone asking, "Why are you here?" He slowly reached into his pack and pulled out a small piece of bread. Breaking it in half, he placed one half on the ground between them. Then pushed it closer to her with a careful hand. The girl stared at it, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. Was this a trick? Her people often gave her scraps just to laugh when she begged for more, but the human did not laugh. He simply set the bread down and took a bite from his own half. Chewing slowly, his gesture was simple-eyed safe. You can eat too. The girl's stomach growled, and shame burned her cheeks. She wanted to ignore it, but hunger was stronger. With trembling fingers, she reached forward, grabbed the bread, and took the tiniest bite. The taste filled her mouth, warm and soft. Tears stung her eyes. It had been so long since she ate something that was not stolen or rotten. She chewed carefully, almost afraid it would disappear. The human watched, his face unreadable, but inside, something heavy lifted. He had given food to a stranger before, but never had it felt so important. The girl glanced at him again, her eyes wide. She whispered another word, one that sounded fragile, almost broken. The human could not understand it, but he guessed its meaning, a thank you. He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. That smile made her heart stumble. No one had ever smiled at her. Not her parents, not her people. But here was a human, a stranger, smiling as though her existence mattered. Still, fear lingered. She pulled her knees closer, unsure if she could trust him. Trust was a wound that never healed. Every time she had hoped, her hope had been crushed, and yet, something in her chest told her this was different. The human did not move closer. He respected her space. He simply sat near the fire he built, letting its light flicker between them. His presence was calm, not demanding. For her, that was new. People always demanded, be stronger, be taller, be useful. But this man demanded nothing. The night deepened. The girl's eyes grew heavy. But she fought sleep. She did not want to. Close her eyes in front of him. What if he left? What if he was gone when she woke up, like everyone else? She stared at him, her small body trembling from both fear and cold. The human noticed. Slowly, he shrugged off his cloak and placed it closer to her. Not on her. He knew sudden touch would startle her, but near enough that she could choose. The girl hesitated, her fingers hovering. Then, with a shaky breath, she pulled the cloak around herself. Its warmth sank into her bones. Her eyes met his once more. This time, they were softer, less afraid, and though no words were shared, an understanding formed. In that moment, she realized maybe not all beings would abandon her. Maybe this human was different, and the human, looking into her fragile gaze, knew one thing for certain: he could not walk away. The unexpected encounter had begun. And neither of them would ever be the same again. The forest had grown quiet. Too quiet, the fire between them crackled softly. Throwing shadows across the trees, the little alien girl sat wrapped in the human's cloak. Her eyes half closed, but her body stiff with unease. Every sound made her flinch. Every whisper of the wind reminded her of the voices that once called her weak and worthless. The human, sitting nearby, noticed her unease. He said nothing, only kept his posture calm and steady, as if promising with silence that no harm would come while he was there. The girl wanted to believe it. She wanted to think that maybe this strange being really meant her no harm. Yet her heart still carried scars that whispered, "No one stays, no one protects. Everyone leaves, but the night was not safe." In the distance, sharp voices echoed. The girl froze, her ears twitching. Her people, they were near. She knew the sound of their harsh laughter, the rhythm of their heavy steps. They were searching. The human caught the shift in her expression, her sudden fear, and he turned his head toward the sound. 3 shadows appeared among the trees, tall, broad, glowing faintly like the rest of her kind. They carried spears that glimmered in the moonlight. Their voices were cruel, mocking. The little defect must be hiding somewhere. She cannot survive without crawling back to us. Let us drag her home like a stray animal. The girl's breath caught in her throat. She shrank back, pressing herself into the tree behind her. Her tiny hands gripped the human's cloak tighter. Her eyes filled with terror. She had run from them once, and she knew what it meant if they caught her. They would make her suffer for the shame she had caused them. The human's jaw tightened. He stood slowly, his tall frame rising above the firelight. His hand rested on the hilt of the blade at his side. He was only one man, but his stance carried a weight that the girl had never seen before. He did not move to attack, but he positioned himself between her and the advancing figures, a living shield. The aliens laughed when they saw him. A human? One sneered, "You think you can protect her? She is not even worth protecting." Another raised his spear, pointing toward the trembling girl. "Give her to us, human. She is ours. She belongs to us even if we hate her." The human's voice was calm but firm. "She belongs to no one, and you will not touch her." His words were steady, unshaken. The girl's eyes widened, her heart pounded. No one had ever spoken for her before. No one had stood between her and cruelty. The aliens scoffed, stepping closer. The firelight reflected off their sharp teeth. Their voices grew harsher. "Move aside, fragile creature. You do not understand. This is our problem. Our shame, not yours." But the human did not step aside. His boots dug into the soil. His eyes locked on theirs. "If she is your shame, then you have no honor." The girl gasped softly, her small body trembling. She wanted to speak, to tell him not to fight for her, because she was not worth it. That's what she had always been told, but the words stuck. In her throat, the man stood firm, and in that moment, she saw something she had never seen before: someone willing to face danger for her. The forest grew tense. The three aliens circled, testing his resolve. One jabbed his spear forward, but the human swatted it aside with his blade, sparks flashing in the dark. The girl whimpered, covering her ears. Every strike, every clash of metal reminded her of all the times she had been pushed down, yet this time someone was fighting for her. Not against her. The battle was quick, but fierce. The human's movements were sharp and precise. He did not waste energy. Every strike was controlled. Every block strong. Though outnumbered, he forced them back step by step. His eyes never left them, and his body never moved from its place between them and the girl. At last, the aliens hissed in frustration. "This is not the end, human. You cannot protect her forever." They spat on the ground, their glowing eyes filled with hate, and disappeared into the shadows of the forest. Their footsteps faded, leaving behind only silence and the soft crackle of fire. The human lowered his blade, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. He turned back, kneeling once more, so his height did not tower over her. The girl's wide eyes stared at him, her lips trembling. She whispered something in her tongue. Broken, uncertain, but filled with awe. She had never seen anyone defy her people for her sake, never. She had always believed she was not worth saving. Yet this human had risked his life for her without hesitation. Her tears spilled freely, and she pressed her small hands against her chest. As if trying to hold her beating heart, the human reached out slowly, not to touch her, but to let her see his open hand, an offer of trust. She stared at it for a long moment. Her instincts screamed to pull away, to hide, but something deep inside her, something fragile and desperate, made her extend her tiny hand. She placed it in his, trembling but real. The warmth of his hand surrounded hers, strong and steady, for the first time in her life. She felt safe in someone's presence. The darkness around them still whispered of danger, but within that small circle of firelight, she discovered something greater than fear. She discovered the possibility of trust. And though her people had left her behind, tonight she was not alone. Tonight, the human had proven that she was worth standing for. The forest was calm again. But the little alien girl's heart was not. Her chest still shook from the fear. Her small body curled tight inside the human's cloak. She had seen her people come for her, seen their eyes filled with hate. And she had seen this human fight them away. She did not understand why. She did not understand how, but she knew this. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her side. The fire burned low. Glowing red in the night, the human added dry wood, and sparks rose into the air like tiny stars. The warmth spread through the clearing, pushing away the cold. The girl's eyes followed the flames, wide and full of wonder in her clan. Fire was never meant for her. She had always been pushed away, told not to sit near it, told she was too small, too unworthy. But here she sat close, and no one stopped her. The human glanced at her, his gaze soft. He opened his pack again and pulled out a piece of dried meat, a loaf of bread, and a small flask of water. He set them down carefully, breaking the bread into smaller pieces before sliding them across the ground toward her. She stared at the food as if it were a treasure. Her tiny hands trembled. She looked at him with suspicion at first. Was this kindness real? Or was it a trick, the same way her people used to mock her by tossing scraps? But the human didn't laugh. He didn't jeer. He simply nodded at the food. Then took a bite of his own portion to show her it was safe. Hesitantly, the girl reached out. Her fingers brushed against the bread. Her heart pounded. Slowly, she took a bite. The taste was plain but soft, and tears filled her eyes. It had been so long since she had eaten something given to her freely. Not stolen, not fought for. Her lips trembled, but she kept eating. Each bite making her chest ache with a strange mix of hunger and gratitude. The human poured water into a small cup and set it near her. She grabbed it quickly, almost protectively. Her throat burned as the water slid down. She coughed a little, then held the cup close. As if afraid it might be taken away, the man said nothing, but his heart ached at the sight. He could see clearly she was not just hungry for food, she was hungry for kindness. The fire popped loudly, making her flinch. She pulled the cloak tighter around her tiny body. The human shifted, taking a stick and poking the fire to keep it alive. The light flickered across his face, casting shadows that looked both fierce and gentle. The girl studied him, her head tilting slightly. She wondered why he stayed, why he gave her food, why he risked his life. Her lips parted, and a weak sound slipped out in her language. He could not understand, but her tone was soft. Questioning, she seemed to be asking, why? The human placed his hand on his chest and then pointed toward her. Because. His eyes steady. His message was simple. Because you matter. Her eyes widened. Her chest tightened. No one had ever told her that. Her people said she was nothing. Her parents turned their backs. Her clan left her behind. But this human, who owed her nothing, who barely knew her, treated her like she was someone worth saving. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time they were not from sorrow alone. The human leaned back against a log, relaxing finally. His sword lay near, ready if danger returned, but for now. The firelight was enough to protect them. The girl slowly crept a little closer. Her body still shivered. But she wanted the warmth. She wanted to feel something other than cold and fear. She sat a small step closer to the fire, her eyes fixed on the glowing embers. Her stomach no longer hurt. Her throat no longer burned. For the first time in many nights, she was not starving, not thirsty, not running. The warmth of the cloak, the food in her belly, and the soft light of the fire felt like a dream. She curled her knees to her chest, resting her chin on them, and her eyes blinked slowly. The human noticed her eyelids dropping. He smiled faintly. His voice was low, steady, almost like a lullaby, though she could not understand. You're safe now? Sleep. She did not know the words, but she felt their meaning. Her small body relaxed, her head tilted, and finally, exhaustion pulled her down. She lay on her side, the cloak wrapping her in warmth. Her face was peaceful, though faint traces of tears still clung to her cheeks. The human adjusted a log on the fire, keeping the flame alive, and glanced at her once more. His heart clenched. She looked so small, so fragile, like a child who had never been given a chance to feel loved. He sat awake for hours, keeping watch. The forest around them whispered. The night stretched long, but the fire burned steady. And the girl slept. For the first time in her life, her sleep was not filled with cold, not haunted by cruel laughter, but softened by warmth and the steady presence of someone who refused to leave her when the dawn began to break. The first golden light touched the trees. The little alien girl stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking against the brightness. For a moment, she looked confused. Then her gaze fell on the human still sitting near the fire, awake, waiting, his cloak still around her. The fire still warm, her lips parted, and the faintest sound came out. Something soft and fragile. It might have been her first attempt at the human's tongue, or it might have been just a whisper of gratitude. Either way, her eyes said what her words could not. She was no longer completely alone. The fire crackled. The forest stirred with new life. And for the first time, she felt it the warmth of belonging. The new day rose slowly, golden light spilling. Through the trees, birds chirped in the branches, and the world seemed almost peaceful. The little alien girl stirred awake, blinking in the soft glow of morning. For a moment, she forgot where she was. She forgot the loneliness, the hunger, the cold. All she felt was the cloak around her shoulders and the gentle warmth of the fire. But then she turned her head and saw him, the human, still sitting near the fire. Still awake, his eyes were tired, but his posture was steady. He had stayed all night, guarding her. The girl's chest tightened. Her kind had never stayed. Never. Guarded, never protected, yet here he was, a stranger, treating her as if she mattered. She sat up slowly, her small fingers clutching the cloak. She wanted to say something, but her voice was weak, and words in his language were impossible. Instead, she lowered her head, whispering a soft sound that carried gratitude in every syllable. The human did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. He nodded gently, a faint smile on his face. The morning, however, was not as safe as it seemed. Far away, the sound of horns echoed through the forest, deep and angry. The girl froze, her ears twitching. She knew that sound. It was the call of her people, warriors of the clan. They were searching again, this time in greater numbers. The human heard it too. His eyes narrowed. He reached for his sword, the metal catching the morning light. The girl's body trembled. She shook her head. Quickly, whispering in fear, her people would not stop. They would drag her back. They would punish her for the shame of being weak. And if the human resisted, they would kill him too. Her chest ached. Her heart screamed for her to run, to hide, to disappear so that he would not pay the price of kindness. But her legs would not move. She could not leave him, not after what he had done for her. Tears burned in her eyes as she whispered again, trying to tell him he should go. He should leave her, save himself, but the human stood tall. His voice calm but firm. "I will not leave you." She did not understand the words, but the look in his eyes was enough. He meant it. The horns grew louder. The forest alive with the sound of approaching footsteps. Branches cracked. Voices barked orders. Soon dark shapes appeared between the trees' warriors, larger and stronger than the girl, carrying spears, blades, and shields. Their faces twisted with cruelty. Their leader stepped forward, his armor glowing faintly. His eyes narrowed when he saw the scene before him, the little alien girl wrapped in a human's cloak, sitting by a human's fire. "You dare touch what is ours." The leader spat. His voice boomed like thunder. "She is a disgrace, a weakness we cast aside. And yet you take her as if she is yours to protect." His words dripped with hate. The warriors behind him laughed cruelly. The girl shook violently. She wanted to vanish into the earth. She wanted to hide forever. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "No. No." She feared not only for herself, but for the man who had shown her kindness. The human stepped forward, standing between her and the warriors. His blade gleamed, his eyes locked on the leader. His voice was steady. "She does not belong to you. You abandoned her. You have no right." The aliens roared with laughter. "No right. She is one of us, whether weak or strong, and if she cannot survive, then she must die. That is our law." The leader's gaze hardened. "Move aside, human, or you will share her fate." The girl's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break. This was the price of kindness. If he refused to give her up, he would be killed. If he gave her up, she would be dragged back into torment. Her hands shook as she clutched the cloak tighter. Her voice broke in sobs. She wanted to tell him to let her go, to save himself. But the words caught in her throat. The human did not move. His voice was cold steel. If your law means abandoning children, then your law is worthless. He raised his sword, ready to face them. The firelight reflected in his eyes, not with fear, but with determination. The warrior snarled. Some stepping forward, spears pointed. The air grew heavy. The girl covered her ears. Unable to bear the sound of hate around her, she wanted to close her eyes, but her gaze kept returning to him, standing strong, unshaken. The leader sneered. You fight for nothing. Human, she is worthless. She is nothing. The human's reply was sharp and clear. She is not nothing. The words struck the girl like lightning. Her tears fell, hot and endless. No one had ever said those words to her. No one had ever believed she was anything more than a mistake. And yet, here he was, declaring it before all who hated her. The warriors shifted, their weapons gleaming. The battle was close. The girl's heart raced with terror. Her body trembled with despair. She had thought she was safe, thought she had finally found warmth. But now she saw the truth's kindness had a price, and he was about to pay it. The fire between them cracked loudly, sparks flying into the air. The human's grip on his sword tightened. He braced himself as the first warrior lunged. The price of kindness was about to be tested in blood. The forest shook with footsteps as the alien warriors closed in, their glowing eyes fixed on the human who stood between them and the tiny girl. The fire crackled at his back, and the girl sat curled in the cloak, trembling. Her people called her worthless, but now they wanted to drag her back only to punish her for the shame she carried. The human raised his blade, steady and strong. His breath was calm. His voice cut through the tension like steel. You will not take her, the leader snarled. His teeth bared. She is weak. She is a stain on our blood, and yet you fight for her. Foolish creature, do you not understand? She is not worth the air she breathes. The girl flinched at the words. Burying her face in her knees, she had heard them all her life. They echoed in her mind like chains. But this time, something was different. The human's voice rose against them. Every life has worth, even hers. Especially hers. The warriors roared in anger, and the first one charged. His spear thrust forward with deadly force. The human sidestepped, his blade flashing. Sparks lit the air as steel met steel. The alien stumbled back, shocked at the speed of his strike. Another warrior came. Swinging his blade, the human blocked. The force rattling through his arm, but he did not falter. His feet dug into the soil. His stance unbroken. The girl peeked through her trembling fingers. Her heart pounding. She had never seen anyone fight for her. Never seen anyone face so many for her sake. The warriors pressed harder. Their spears stabbed. Their swords swung. The human's arms ached. His breaths grew heavier, but he did not back down. Every time they tried to push past him, he blocked, forcing them back. He was only one, but he stood like a wall, unyielding. The leader stepped forward, his eyes burning with fury. You think you can defy us? You think one human can change her fate? His voice was thunder. His blade gleamed as he raised it high. The human met his gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to fall silent. I don't think, the man said, his voice steady. I choose. The leader lunged. Their blades clashed with a sound like lightning. Sparks scattered into the night. The fight was fierce. Each strike heavy. Each blow enough to kill. The human staggered once, blood dripping from a shallow cut on his arm. But he gritted his teeth and pushed harder. His heart burned with determination. The girl's tears streamed down her face. She wanted to scream, to beg him to stop. He was bleeding for her, risking everything for someone her people had thrown away. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her chest, her voice cracking in whispers. Why? Why would you fight for me? But the human fought on. His body strained, his muscles ached, yet his spirit did not break. He fought not for glory, not for pride, but for the small figure trembling behind him. He fought because no one else ever had. He fought because in her he saw something fragile, something precious, something that deserved a chance. The leader's blade struck again, and this time the human caught it with both hands on his sword. The impact drove him to his knees. His breath came ragged. The girl gasped, her tiny body lurching forward. Her heart screamed that she could not lose him. Not now, not when he was the first to ever care. The leader sneered, pressing harder. You cannot win. Human, she will never be more than nothing. His voice dripped with venom, but the human, bleeding and shaking, lifted his head. His voice thundered back. Then I will fight until nothing is all that's left of me. With a surge of strength, he twisted his blade. Forcing the leader's strike aside, he rose again, sweat and blood dripping, his eyes locked, fierce and unbroken. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his spirit burned like fire. The warriors hesitated, their sneers fading into uncertainty for the first time. The little alien girl saw it clearly. He was not just fighting her enemies. He was fighting her despair. He was fighting the voice inside her that said she was nothing. And in that moment, she realized something. If he could fight for her, maybe she could fight for herself too. Her small voice broke the air, trembling but clear. Stop. Please stop hurting him. The warriors turned, surprised. For the first time, she had spoken against them. Her people stared, shocked that the weak one dared to speak. Her eyes shone with tears, but also with something new. Courage. The leader laughed cruelly, so the little defect finds her tongue. He lifted his blade again, ready to strike the human down, but before he could swing, the girl stepped forward, her tiny body trembling but unyielding. She spread her arms wide, standing in front of the human. No, she cried. Her voice cracked but loud enough to echo. He is mine. The forest froze. The warriors stared in disbelief. The human behind her blinked, his heart clenching. The girl's knees shook, but she did not move aside. She had always been called worthless, but now she stood as if declaring herself priceless. The leader snarled, but hesitation flickered in his eyes. To strike now would mean cutting down one of his own. Even if she was weak, it was against the pride of their kind. His hand trembled on his sword. His rage boiled, but tradition bound him. The human, bloodied and exhausted, placed a hand gently on her shoulder. His voice was low but firm. You don't have to stand alone anymore. The warriors slowly stepped back, muttering. Their leader spat in fury. But he knew the law. The girl had claimed protection, and with her defiance, their power over her weakened. With a final glare, they turned and vanished into the forest, their threats lingering like shadows. Silence fell. The fire crackled softly. The girl's body gave out, and she collapsed into the human's arms. He held her close, his breath ragged. Her tiny hands gripped his shirt as if she would never let go. Her tears soaked his chest, but her voice whispered with fragile hope. You chose me. And the human, despite his wounds, tightened his arms around her, whispering, always. The forest was silent again, but the silence was not empty. It was heavy, filled with the echo of battle, the scent of burned wood, and the faint shimmer of blood on the ground. The warriors had gone, their angry voices fading into the distance. The fire burned low, its glow soft against the dark trees. The human sat on the ground, his body tired and wounded. His arm bled from deep cuts. and his breaths came slow and heavy, yet his eyes did not close. He looked at the small figure in his arms, the one he had fought so hard to protect. The little alien girl clung to him with all her strength. Her tiny hands fisted into his shirt, her glowing eyes wet with tears. She trembled, not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming weight of what had just happened. She had stood before her people, spoken against them, and claimed him as hers. That one act had changed everything. She lifted her head slowly, her lips trembling. Her eyes searched his face, seeing the blood, the exhaustion, and yet the faint smile that remained there. Her chest tightened painfully. Why? She whispered in her broken voice, though she knew he did not understand. Why had he chosen her? Why had he risked his life? The human brushed a hand gently over her hair. His touch was careful, almost hesitant, as if he feared she might break. His voice was low, soft. Because you are not alone anymore. She did not understand the words, but she felt the meaning. His tone carried warmth, a promise. The girl's tears spilled again, hot and endless. For so long she had believed she was nothing. For so long she had been told she was weak, useless, unwanted. But now, in the human's arms, she felt something she had never felt before. She felt safe. The firelight flickered across their faces. The human leaned back against a tree, his body heavy with exhaustion, but he refused to let her go. He tightened his arms around her small frame, holding her as though the whole world could not pry her away. She pressed her face into his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Each thump told her the same thing: he was still here, still alive, still choosing her. Time passed slowly, the forest calmed, night deepened, and stars filled the sky. The girl drifted between wakefulness and sleep, but every time her body stirred, his arms were still around her, never loosening, never leaving. When dawn broke again, the forest turned golden. The human opened his eyes to the sound of soft breathing against him. The girl was curled in his lap, her cloak wrapped tightly, her small face peaceful in sleep. She looked fragile, but for the first time, she did not look broken. The human smiled faintly, though pain throbbed in his wounds. He shifted carefully, reaching for his pack with one hand while still holding her with the other. He tore a strip of cloth and tied it around his bleeding arm. He winced, but made no sound, not wanting to disturb her. The girl stirred at last, her glowing eyes blinking open. She looked around quickly, panic flashing through her before she realized she was still in his arms. Her small body relaxed, and she let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She lifted her head slightly, staring at him. Her lips moved slowly, as if struggling to form words. Finally, in her halting voice, she whispered something soft. It was not in his language, but it was filled with meaning, perhaps a word for safe, or thank you, or maybe even home. The human didn't understand the word, but he nodded anyway, brushing her hair back gently. His eyes told her he had heard her heart, even if he did not know the sound of her language. The girl leaned her forehead against his chest, her tears falling again, but these were not the tears of despair. They were lighter, softer, like rain after a long drought. For the first time in her life, she felt she belonged somewhere in his arms, in his choice, in his protection. Her people had called her weak, but she realized now that being small did not mean being worthless. She had survived. She had endured. And now she had been chosen. She whispered again, her voice steadier this time. And though he could not understand, he knew what she meant. She was telling him that she would never leave his side. Oh, Gus. The human smiled, his arms tightening around her. He spoke softly. I'll carry you as long as you need. His tone was strong, steady, a promise carved into the silence of the morning. Together, they sat in the glow of dawn. The battle was behind them, but the bond they had forged in fire and blood was unbreakable. The girl closed her eyes once more, curling against him. Her body small, but her heart now filled with something vast hope. He looked down at her, his chest heavy with both pain and peace. He had made his choice, and he would never regret it. He would stand against her enemies. He would guard her when she slept, and he would remind her every day that she was not a mistake. Not worthless, not forgotten. She was his now, not as a possession, but as someone precious, someone worth holding. And as the morning light wrapped them in gold, the little alien girl smiled faintly in her sleep. Finally, held at last.